evening, everyone, and welcome to the S. Walden Miller Black Luminaries in Neuropsychology interview series. I'm your host today. My name is Dr. Kendra Anderson, and I am the secretary for the Society for Black Neuropsychology. So SBN is incredibly humbled to present this series of interviews with trailblazers in the field of neuropsychology. So we created this series after coming to the stark realization that just the histories and the contributions of Black neuropsychologists to the field hadn't really been adequately documented. So the series was created with one simple goal in mind: to illuminate the stories of Black innovators in the field of neuropsychology. So we hope that this series will educate the neuropsychological community and the public at large by sharing the personal stories behind the research and clinical work of innovators in the field. And two, we wanted to create a space for trainees to interact with leaders in the field in a meaningful way through engaging in dialogue and question and answer sessions with interviewees about their professional journey. So since this is our first show, I'll give you a little bit of background about the setup. In each show, we will first highlight a trailblazer in the field of neuropsychology or a related field in our Ancestor Spotlight. Then we'll introduce our guest and spend about 30 minutes or so learning about their journey and just learning more about them. Then during that segment, be sure to go ahead and submit your questions that you may have, because we'll have about a 20-minute Q&A session where you'll be able to ask your questions in real time. All right. Well, without further ado, we'll transition to our Ancestor Spotlight. So our Ancestor Spotlight will honor Dr. Robert Lee Williams II for today. So Dr. Robert Williams was born February 20th, 1930. He's a professor emeritus of psychological and brain sciences and African American studies at the Washington University in St. Louis, and was a prominent figure in the history of African American psychology. He is a well-known critic of racial and cultural biases in IQ testing, and he coined the word ebonics in 1973. He's also known for developing the Black Intelligence Test of Cultural Homogeneity, and he's published more than 60 professional articles and several books. He was a founding member of the Association of Black Psychologists and the founding director of Washington University's Black Studies program in St. Louis. Dr. Williams crossed over on August 12th, 2020. Please join me in honoring Dr. Robert Lee Williams II. All right, so now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest for today. He absolutely needs no introduction, but I will go ahead and read his impressive bio. So Dr. Marc Norman received a Ph.D. in clinical psychology, emphasizing in neuropsychology, from Brigham Young University under the mentorship of Dr. Erin Bigler. He completed the UCSD VA Medical Center Psychology Internship program in 1995. And then he continued research at the VA Medical Center and practiced clinical neuropsychology at Sharp Memorial Hospital Rehabilitation Center, specializing in cerebrovascular accidents and traumatic brain injury. Following the NIH-funded research postdoctoral internship with Dr. Dean Delis, Dr. Norman joined the UC San Diego Psychiatry faculty. He holds a Diplomate in Clinical Neuropsychology from the American Board of Clinical Neuropsychology and is an examiner. His clinical work includes epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, TBI, stroke, brain tumors, neurodevelopmental injuries, and Wada procedures. He also specializes in intraoperative brain mapping and solid organ transplant. His research interests include medical disorders affecting cognitive changes, normative data, and demographic influences on neuropsychological testing. Dr. Norman currently serves as the Executive Director of the International Neuropsychological Society. He also serves in several other capacities, including the Professional Advisory Board for the Epilepsy Foundation of America, the San Diego chapter of the Clinical Advisory Committee for Multiple Sclerosis Society, and the Pacific South Coast chapter. All right. Please join me, everyone, in welcoming Dr. Marc Norman. Hi, Dr. Norman.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Anderson. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and for the all of SBN for offering me the opportunity to do this first interview. It's very fun.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you so much. We're so grateful to have this wonderful lineup and to really learn more about your personal journey in the field. So I have so many questions, but a wise woman once told me, when you don't know where to start at the beginning. Okay. So I'd love to hear more about your roots, where you came from and how that continues to influence you today.
Wow. So, wow, that's a broad question. So I'm in San Diego now, and so I was actually born and raised here. And so the fact that I'm here has nothing to do with any of that. My whole family, my background is my father's side is from the Caribbean, so from St. Thomas, a large portion of my family, but I have a lot of family in New York and things. So I was actually born and raised here in San Diego, went away to school, and my mentor said, you have to go back to UCSD. That's the best internship in the country at that time. And that's how I ended up back here, not because of any other particular reason.
Okay. So some Afro-Caribbean roots.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. And so it seems like your mentor played a huge role in guiding you or encouraging you towards UCSD. And I know you've been mentored by some of the greats like Dr. Bigler, Dr. Delis. Can you tell me about a mentor who was very influential in your neuropsych journey, outside of, maybe some of the more obvious ones?
Yeah, there were a lot of other people along the way before I got to neuropsychology. I actually wasn't going to even apply to a clinical program. And I went to one of my instructors. My grades weren't all that great. I went to one of my instructors and he said, well, do you know that I'm on the committee? I want you to apply to the program. Because someone else already told me that I'd be able to stay there. I was at BYU and get a master's degree. And I go, well, I'll stay, hang out and do that, get better grades and stuff. And I got into graduate school, and it happened to be Erin Bigler's first year at BYU. So I was kind of his first student. So it was a large opportunity at that time. It was all about timing. So he was a huge influence in my life and continues to this day. And, outside of his eminence and obviously in neuroimaging, he's just a fabulous person. He still remains a very good friend. And one of the most important things that drives how I do work still is putting the patient first. I mean, I remember so many times patients would come in, because we had them coming from all over the world, and somebody would come in and they wouldn't know anything about their insurance. Because, well, let's not worry about that. Let's just take care of you. And so it was always the patient first, and it still drives how I approach neuropsychology. Is like, what are we doing this for? It's not for the RVUs. It's not for any of the other stuff. We need to be person driven, not patient, person driven. And then with Dean, I still to this day will always feel like I know nothing about neuropsychology, because every time I see both of them present, and Dean is just a chill guy, and I learned so much. My writing and other things were so driven by them. But I hear them give talks, and I just realize I know nothing about neuropsychology to this day, because they're both just such fabulous neuropsychologists and good people, and really, really good people.
Yeah, it's so funny that you talk about, having that moment in front of, these very influential people and your mentors and good friends, and in their presence feeling like you know nothing about neuropsychology. And I laugh at that, because that's exactly how I feel in the presence of people like you and the Dr. Manleys and Dr. Birds. It's just like it's very it's great to hear that, you know, maybe that imposter syndrome maybe never really leaves, no matter how far in the field and how far to the mountaintop you can reach in the field, that imposter syndrome still lingers a little bit.
Well, it's I would phrase it slightly different than
Yeah.
that. So, you know, through my journey, what I thought, you know, by the time I got part of the way through graduate school, I thought,
Mhm.
well, I know about this much, but there's probably about this much that I don't know.
Yeah.
And as I learned more, I realized, oh, there's so much more I don't know. I know about this much, but I don't know this much. But
Yeah.
then what the reality is that nobody knows that much. And I think that's the difference between being an imposter. It's when you realize that nobody else knows anything else either. And it
Mhm.
just lightens the load tremendously that we have the things that we know and that we're very good at, but
Mhm.
other people don't know information that we know. And it's learning that difference, that everybody listening, you know a lot of information that other people don't know. And so it's knowing where we fit in.
Yeah, I love the way you reframe that from the imposter syndrome to humility, you know, in the sense that there's no way anyone could know everything, no matter how many accolades and how long you've been in the field.
Yeah, everybody's an idiot in some way.
Yeah,
Everyone knows that. Like,
I appreciate that reframe.
ignorant human beings, so which is fine. Which is fine.
You talked about how you weren't even going to pursue a clinical graduate school in clinical psychology. And your mentor was really it sounds like a big factor in nudging you towards that way. Were there any other significant factors that motivated you towards pursuing neuropsychology?
Not so much. So, you know, at that time, neuropsychology wasn't really a huge thing, not like it is now. And
Yeah.
so then you never would have had a publication or something applying to graduate school, at least for us. And now, you know, we're walking in and people are basically junior faculty members by the time they're entering graduate school. It just makes me nauseous about how productive they've been. How much they even know the word neuropsychology. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it's people, you know, like there were small things. So a friend that I used to study with, like, taught me the difference between counseling psychology and clinical psychology. And then I just was able to be offered opportunities. And I ran a research lab for somebody who was one of the brightest men I've ever known. And it just, so there were small steps. It wasn't like a huge thing where I just ended up in a place.
Mm, okay. So it was those small nudges, not necessarily this
Yeah.
huge motivating factor that led you towards pursuing the field.
Yeah. And it's, you
Well,
know, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You know, and I think a lot of people still kind of struggle with that when, you know, when I'm giving talks for junior folks,
Mhm.
they see people who are very focused down this pathway to get somewhere. And I just reassure them, it's okay if you have no idea what you want to do. I had no idea. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
You know, get your training, get your education. The path will come. You don't have to know it all now. It's perfectly okay.
And you know, it's so comforting to hear you say that, because I do mentor some trainees, and I've heard from trainees that it seems like you really have to have all your ducks in a row from the get-go to really be
Yeah.
competitive in neuropsychology. And it's intimidating. It's intimidating when you know, you have other trainees that come from programs like UCSD who have, you know, 10 publications going in, and they're basically junior faculty. What might you say to, you know, a trainee out there that is really stressed because they don't have all these ducks in a row and has mapped out their full career, you know, from the
Yeah.
get-go?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is being realistic about options. And so when I'm talking to people from programs that are not the large established programs, it's, you know, the main message is there are a lot of paths to get to where you can potentially be. And you don't have to go to some large school with some huge reputation. There's a lot of ways to go about learning neuropsychology, and to get on a path that you want to be on. And so I think talking to people, getting some mentorship of doing that, because
Mm.
sometimes those paths can be really tough. People go to programs that are extremely expensive, where they're not going to be competitive. So having a conversation like in that you have informed information about doing that. But there's a lot of ways to become a neuropsychologist. So I encourage people, if that's what you want to do, you can pursue it, but get all of the information because that's so important. But don't give up. And you're not everybody. If you don't go to like a really competitive school, you're not going to be competitive. Some people are just not competitive for big internships. That's fine. There's a lot of other really good programs that people get into and still get there.
Yeah. I know there are several people out there that really needed to hear that message. Um, and I know that that message, encouraged maybe a lot of people who may be even getting discouraged, especially given, how the pandemic has impacted some trainees' course of training. So I appreciate that. So earlier you were talking about how your mentors really oriented you towards patient-centered care. Can you talk a little bit more about what keeps you motivated in the field? What keeps you motivated to see patients and produce research? Um, yeah, what's that driving force for you?
It's something I don't reflect on a whole lot,
Mm.
and it's definitely changed over time. So when there's some key pieces that I've always enjoyed, and so training, I have the opportunity to train really, really smart, talented people, and so it's so much fun sitting there and watching brains turn,
Yeah.
and ideas come and doing that. Same with board exams. It's just when people get a question, you just see them thinking about it and putting things together, and sometimes that light goes on, and that's just super cool. I still love that piece of it. And when we're dealing with complex issues and watching people show their best ability when they're bringing their A game every day, that's just exceptionally cool. Another driving piece is when we see, for me, when we really help someone who is not able to get through a disability system, they don't know the resources that are out there, and we match them to what they need. That's still a huge thing. Or, they we provide information because no one's ever told me that before. And you
Mm.
see that it makes a significant and profound difference. And it's not just about neuropsychology. I mean, we're about health. And so sometimes it's misinformation about reproductive health or being treated. There's so much we can influence in doing that. So that's a big piece of it. And then for me, another piece now is the opportunity to change systems. So had the opportunity to sit on several boards and be in positions where I like being in the background and I like seeing things move and putting things together and introducing people to other people and watching those relationships grow into meaningful experience. So there's a lot of things that drive me in different ways.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the fact that we are, you know, kind of that source of information for our patients, especially patients who maybe we're the first person that's actually sat down and spent several hours with them
Yeah.
and explained what's going on to them in a palpable way that's impactful for them. And I mean, you're speaking my language, and that's especially important for me when it comes to underserved and marginalized groups, particularly as it relates to the Black community. So if we had to look, 5, 10 years in the future, what would you hope to see, or would be your ideal vision when it comes to the Black community, and how neuropsychology impacts the Black community, whether that be through public policy, access? What would be your vision for that?
Yeah, there's so many levels to that question. So part of it um, oh wow, like where to start with that. So
Yeah.
there are issues that have to do with just access to care,
Mm.
which it still infuriates me to no end. So as COVID happened, we use Epic, but the only way you can use Epic is, for us, if you want to do a video visit, is you have to have an Android or an Apple phone. Yeah,
Mhm.
my patients walk in, they have flip phones, and it's like this. They don't have access to care, and this
Mm.
super pisses me off after a year that no one seems to be bothered by this small fact. at all, and that we're not serving the populations that we expand here in San Diego to our North County where people have money, but we're not taking care of the people that live in our county. They're just people are worried about money. So those things still irritate me to no end, and I will just go
Yes.
on and on about those kinds of things. So my hope is at some point we are addressing this better, and that we are addressing bringing people into our field better at our local level. We still do very poorly at those kinds of things. Um, Another thing, obviously, is our pipeline issues in bringing people into, especially academic medicine, which I love so much. I mean, there's so many spaces for this. But another huge piece for me is leadership. That people, because what I've seen is people have a lot of great ideas, but less experience in actually working with system or understanding the systems. And so I hear people say, I want to change this, but there's a lack of knowledge and experience in that system to know that you're not talking to the right person. That's not going to change anything. We have to
Right.
in the system in order to just make things move. So I think the key piece to me is that to help everybody, people can have different roles in this. Not everybody needs to be a mentor. Not everybody needs to hold or wants to hold a leadership position. But being able to influence people to get them to their goals, no matter what their goals are, because that's how we build. At the community level for some, at the legislative level for others. But it's increasing the base so that more can be done.
Absolutely. I mean, you are so correct in the sense that it's such a multifaceted issue, and I think maybe sometimes we get overwhelmed by that. But I've been so encouraged by kind of the recent efforts that I've seen in terms of decolonizing neuropsychology and really bringing these important issues to the forefront. Um, you mentioned that some things have changed over time for you. Can you walk us through or give us a little bit of insight into how your career interests have evolved over time?
Yeah. I think part of it, even over the last several years, I've been offered other opportunities, employment opportunities, and it made me really, for the first time, reflect on what do I want. Somebody was kind of pushing me in that direction. What do you want? It's like, I don't want anything. I don't want to ask for that. I'm fine. And I realized, no, there are some things that I really want. And it's not a global, huge thing. Locally, where I am, you know, I have different sets of things, ideas, and what I want to do than the bigger picture. So I'm fine kind of where I am locally. We have our own little small group. I work with Amanda Gooding, and she's my work partner. We're just so similar in everything that we do. And then I have the larger picture, so I get to work with the INS on a global level. And so over time, things have changed. And as I'm in this role, I think more globally, like how can we increase things in different places in the world? And that is one of the coolest opportunities ever, to be able to be able to potentially have that level of influence across the globe.
Absolutely. How can what is that like to be in a position to be able to impact global systems when it comes to neuropsychology and other related concerns? Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how that feels?
Oh yeah, complete terror. Complete terror. When it's what do I know about finances? And here's $1 million. How do you manage this and manage an office staff that's in a different place and work with hotel contracts, negotiating, which I didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
And there's so many different pieces, and then the board of directors and all these things. And yeah, there's a real shock to the system when that happens. I'm responsible for this, and can I bring down a 50-year-old organization in a month? Like, okay, I'm going to try not to do that. So it's really, there's a learning curve to all of this, but it's such an opportunity, and I get to work with such amazing people that really are there to do the right thing. And this organization really is like that. It's like, why would we do that? I've been with other organizations. It's like all about the money. And it's like, no, we need to get this out. We need to invest in doing this. And so it's a really cool thing that I'm still learning about.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it sounds like an incredibly terrifying and outright, I don't know, maybe even a humbling experience
Oh, absolutely.
to
Yeah.
be able to be in that space on a space where you're working with hundreds of people from across the globe.
Yeah.
So you have several titles. You know, you're executive director, professor. You know, how do you integrate your success that you've had in your career with the other roles you have in your life as partner or uncle or, you know, dad? You know, can you tell us a little bit about how you manage that?
Yeah. And I think this is, you probably touched on something, well, you did touch on something I didn't mention before, and that is the transition of learning to integrate those things more over time.
Mm-hmm.
In graduate school, especially, I thought there's kind of work me and then there's home me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think largely when we're in graduate school, when we're interns, we think there's the work me and there's the separate me. And what goes on at home doesn't affect my work at all. I'm not supposed to let it affect my work. And I think it's an unfortunate message that's given to people. And I think our systems are really poor at doing this. And why can't you? You're a human being. And so when you have that relationship that's going great or that relationship that's tanking, it affects your work. Or when you have that health
Mm-hmm.
issue, or your parents have that health issue, that affects your work or something that goes on in your life. And so it's learning to be able to flexibly move in that space. And when you have a great work partner where like I need to back off and they're supporting me backing off while they take over more, that's such an incredible thing. But learning to integrate me, I am more effective in dealing with patients when I understand myself.
Yeah.
And how I react to things. And so learning that, integrating myself into that over time, whether it's as a male working with a woman who's been sexually assaulted numerous times, whether it's me as a black male
Mm-hmm.
working with someone who may have racist views. So to learn about myself and be able to work with people, I think is such an important thing that I learned over time, and I would encourage all of our trainees to learn about that. And not, you're not separate. You're one person, and it's you in learning. You don't have to be afraid of crying at work or having a difficult day because something's going on in your life. It happens. It happens to all of us, and that's such an important thing to learn.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up about how we're trained to compartmentalize
Mhm.
when it's actually doing us a great disservice because learning to integrate our different selves across different contexts. I'm sure I've spoken with different colleagues about as being a person of color. You know, sometimes I feel like I can't be my family me, you know, my me that I am with my mom or my sister or my cousin at work that may be, you know, intimidating in this space. But over time, being able to learn to integrate those different aspects of myself is actually the probably one of the best gifts we can give our patients as we try to help them navigate through the challenges that they're facing. Um, so, can you tell us about one of the most difficult challenges you've had in your career and how you overcame it?
Wow, I don't know that I want to go into all of that here. I think, I've been very fortunate in many ways where I'm kind of left alone, which is probably the best for everyone when I'm left alone to do things. And I think, we all struggle within our work settings from time to time with individuals or the system. And so, I think being persistent is so important when you feel you'll have those super crappy days where it feels like this is not working for me and this system is really set up to screw me over and there's a lack of support here and it's really problematic. But learning to be, I think as especially I've gotten older, I think long game. Like I know this is not going to last more than a few years. And for some people, like I can't tolerate till next week. And I respect that. But where I am in my life, I can tolerate this for a couple of years because I know that there will be a change. And so I think long game and like how am I setting things up now so that in a year from now or 2 or 3 years from now, this will be in the best space to offer more opportunity where I want to be. And so that's a big piece of it. Um,
Yeah. Hearing you talk about that, I'm, trying to integrate this into, my own professional development too. And as we talk, also integrating some of your pearls of wisdom that you're giving to my situations as well. And absolutely, it can be very difficult to see the long game when everything right in front of you is telling you, you need to hurry up, you need to promote, you need to get these articles out, and how to stay calm in the rough waters. So we know that you're a very busy man and running INS and all the different leadership positions that you're in. But what captures your attention outside of neuropsychology?
I wish more right now, but it's good. This in life goes in phases too. So, I especially the thing I love, especially in like any weekend, especially is when I wake up and I look outside and I go, oh, I'm gonna go fix that thing over there. And many hours have passed, and I've just been distracted with 15 different things, because I'm not on a clock. I'm not worried about time or the next thing I need to get to. I want to pick up my guitar more. I want to spend time doing other kinds of things, and but things go in waves. So I think hopefully this is on the down wave now that INS ended last week. But it's doing those things. I love spending time at the zoo. Love spend time with my family. So it's those are things that I really enjoy. That sometimes like work-life balance is just or integration is just way out of sync. So I have to try to work to get back, to better balance.
Yeah. So you play the guitar. We have I think a couple of musicians on our SBN board.
Yeah, I used the word play, and that may have been a misstatement. I pick it up and I do things to it, and it cries in pain. I think mostly. But.
Well, are you working on any projects that you're really excited about right now?
You mean at work or home or
Work, home, both, either?
just house projects. So I've had quite a few things done, especially since COVID, which are cool. And I over the last few years, I've worked on things outside, so it's a fun place to be, very relaxing place to be. So that's I really enjoy that quite a lot. We always have lots and lots of projects at work, tons of them, and with the INS, and a big piece that I want to now is really expand in terms of culture, in terms of language around the world and build capacity. So we're starting some things with some places in Africa, and I want to really build a better model of not us going into Africa, but us supporting what is there and saying, how can we help? What can we do for your projects and your needs? And we're going to have our first meeting in Asia coming up in 2023. So I'm very excited to work with our colleagues in Taiwan. And so it's those kinds of opportunities, yeah, and new projects and a vision for how to do things.
Wow, yeah, I'll be really excited to hear more about the initiatives you have in Africa and Taiwan. They sound like incredible opportunities.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I could literally talk to you forever, Dr. Norman, but I do want to open up the Q&A session to see if our viewers have any burning questions that they have for you. So let's see here. Let's see what we have already. So does anyone have any questions for Dr. Norman here? I see a few comments. I'll put up here. Let's see here. Dr. Christie is joining us and loves our discussion about humility. Dr. Reed is really identifying with, our discussion for tonight.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Let's see what Dr. Postal has to say. Oh, in terms of advocacy.
Yeah. I definitely agree with Dr. Postal. She's a wonderful leader in our field.
Absolutely.
One of the best leaders, in my opinion. I mean, I respect her so much.
Absolutely. Okay, so it looks like we're getting a few questions. Alexandra Clark asks, can you tell more about your future efforts in Africa?
Yeah, kind of. I talk about some things, and she's doing this just to. She'd normally be texting me this question, so we'll see here. Dr. Clark. So, so I'm certainly not driving anything that's new in Africa. There's a lot of really wonderful things going on that many people have worked on. Julie Bob Holtz has done some really great things, and her son has delivered baseball equipment, and she's done some things with neuropsychology in Africa. Tony Stringer, Dr. Stringer, who you'll be interviewing soon, will probably talk about some of his projects in Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Um, and Dr. Ikanga, who presented at INS last week. And so there are those opportunities going on. One of our former presidents is in South Africa, Ann Watts. So there's lots of things going on in different places. And so recently, a neurologist in Cameroon reached out to us, and there's about 20 neurologists in Cameroon, and they have a dementia group, a multidisciplinary dementia group. They have no neuropsychologists there in Cameroon, but that sounds like an opportunity to us. So we're going to work to help them. They have four main goals, and this is the wonderful thing about this is that they're guiding this and will drive this, and we will support them. And we will work with four main goals that they have in creating, helping develop their multidisciplinary tool for the identification and care of those with dementia in Cameroon. And so hopefully we'll be able to build a model of this type of thing and use it with other things. And we, in the INS, we also have this wonderful, we have some financial resources that will be available for this. And Dr. Stringer will be leading something. Dr. Ozioma Okonkwo and Adam Brickman are co-chairing our dementia special interest group. And so we're going to be bringing in lots of resources from different directions to try to build some things there and then use those kinds of things. Dr. Stringer has worked with Dr. Kanga on translating some things because they need norms, and we've got lots of languages. And so trying to develop some resources that we hopefully can move across the continent, because it's not a country, it's not monolithic. There are different people, different languages, different tribes, different cultures, and so this is going to be a learning opportunity for us doing that.
Yes, sounds like a very fruitful and dynamic type of learning opportunity. So excited about that.
We'll see.
Let's see. Thank you for that question, Dr. Clark. Let's see. Annie Reyes asked, any tips for trainees involved in leadership or interested in being involved?
Yeah, so I should be nice to these two. Both of them are with us, and Annie is one of our current students. So, and she's been marvelous. So I appreciate both of them tremendously, and they're both, and so we want to acknowledge our younger and emerging neuropsychologists, and they're two fabulous neuropsychologists that are emerging. So I want to give them proper credit for that. So. Yeah, so the first question when I talk to trainees is really, what is your interest? And so I think matching up people to their interests. Different organizations do different things. INS is different than AACN, which is different than NAN. And so finding out what somebody's interests are, because I think that's what engages people when you're pursuing something that you have a love and an interest for, whether it's diversity issues or women in neuropsychology with Society for Clinical Neuropsychology. So, finding what your passion is and then matching you and your passion to whatever group that is. Not everybody is interested in leadership. Some people want to be on committees. Some people want to do things. And so, again, finding your passion, and then, I think it can be harmful if I say everybody needs to be a leader. You all have to do. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. That's not your skill set. It's not your interest. And so, I think the biggest thing is to start meeting people that are leading some of these organizations. A lot of organizations are looking for committee members or looking for people to do projects. And so I think that's the first step, is finding out, getting information about the organizations, and then finding out what your passions are, and then matching that up.
Yes, yes. I love how you reminded us to lead with our passion, lead with our values.
Absolutely.
And it'll never steer us wrong.
Yeah.
Thanks for that great question, Annie. All right. Dr. Reed asked, any suggestions for how to pursue clinical opportunities abroad?
I don't know that I have a great answer for that. I know, well, I guess there's a few different kinds of things, and so I do know some people who work abroad. Especially here in the United States, we don't hear about this as much. But I do have a colleague, a friend, who's in the United Arab Emirates. So she trained here, was around long ago. Dr. Alia Amar is in the United Arab Emirates now, and so she saw a job posting and applied for it, and was able to work with people there. So that was kind of how she pursued that. Other people, especially if they're from another country, are returning home to get those kinds of things, and so there's ways to do that.
Okay.
And we have a lot of friends in the United Kingdom and in Europe, and so that is sometimes a little bit easier than in the United States because of work permits and other types of things. So there's there's a lot of nuance to that question
Yeah.
about doing things, and there's so much information because a lot of it has to do with funding. And so when you look at places like the UK and you have the national health system, or you look at Canada and it has a national health system, that is a very different functioning thing than in the US. So first finding out about that, talking to people in those countries can be really helpful because they can tell you a whole lot more than I can do, and the countries are different. So I think that's important. Australia is different than the UK. It's different than the Netherlands, Canada. And so finding out information, talking to people, I think is the first good step.
Yeah, networking. And it sounds like INS, even though it's been virtual here, hopefully we can get back in person soon. But networking with our international and colleagues abroad may be a good step.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Leslie Gaynor asks, thank you for this great conversation, Dr. Norman. What is the best piece of advice you were given or wish you were given as a trainee or early career neuropsychologist? Excellent question.
Oh, good grief, you're making me think here. Best advice. I got lots of terrible. No, no, I didn't actually. Let me think. Best advice. Do you know the reason that this is hard for me to answer is I have to tell you something about myself, which is I don't really listen to very many people, and I don't really look um, for thinking of a word that I can't think of right now. I'm not really looking for people to tell me that I'm doing a great job. I've really, since I was born, I just kind of go to, and it's not like a great, it's just who I am.
You don't need that validation, huh?
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, I don't really need much validation. So I don't listen to people when they tell me I'm doing a bad job or I'm doing a great job. I know when I'm doing that and I'm comfortable with that. And so, I think, well, no, I will. I'll go back to kind of what I said before. When Erin Bigler told me to go back to San Diego, go to San Diego. He actually was raised here too. So he said, go to San Diego. And it's ended up being a great thing. I think, let me add this other piece in here. I think there's different pieces of advice at different points in my career that were equally valuable, but were based on where I was at the time and how I was thinking.
Yeah.
And so as a trainee, if I think developmentally, there were things that I was told when I was an intern that made me think about things different than when I was a second year trainee. And so I don't think there's a best piece of advice. I think the advice at the time where I am developmentally were important because that changes. There isn't like one piece of advice that took me through everything.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. All right. What else? Okay. Do you think there is an emerging shift in our field towards giving ourselves permission to be more self-reflective? Ooh, I love that question.
Ooh.
I know.
Let's see how to answer this. I'm going to answer this maybe in two ways.
Okay.
I think this is an emerging thing. Yes, there's an emerging shift. However, there is still essentially I don't want to say, I'll say it this way, an old guard that is there, and many of them are in leadership positions. And they think they're doing a absolutely fabulous job with inclusion and the way that they view the world. And so they're not really shifting from anything. Okay. They are very set. Academic medicine was set up in a certain way, and that's just the way it should be done, as opposed to thinking, Other people would say, well, if I was to start over and redefine this, I would have a different value structure. And so I think there is now a group that views things very differently. There's a hierarchy, and the people making decisions are clearly not in that mindset of self-reflection, or that's an important piece. I think that is emerging, and at some point we may get to a better balance.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is a shift, but it's not happening from the top levels, no.
Mm. Unfortunately so. Excellent question, Fars. I love
Great
that
question.
question.
Yeah, love that.
Okay. Dr. Mint's in the house. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Mint, who is also an advisory board member and will be interviewing later this month. She asks, what do you think will be the lasting impacts of the COVID-19 and structural racism pandemics on our field?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be at least bimodal. I think there are some very positive things that will happen. And I think there's some things that, if we look and reflect across how people have been mistreated, especially our Asian colleagues,
Mhm.
have been mistreated. I think there's some very negative things that have happened in this pandemic. And I think there are some positive things that have happened in terms of opportunity, networking, and some other things. So I think we're going to get this. So thinking kind of across our field, but if we think about our populations that we serve, I think again there are people that have more, and are able to get more ahead. Especially if we think about how this has affected people's ability to work, and we think about those low wage workers that don't have opportunity, that don't have access to care. And I think there's going to be potential harm. Well, if those that are working, that's a benefit, but there are other people that are very harmed by this. So I think there'll be different levels of impact, and we'll see that over time.
Yes, yes. You bring up an excellent point that the pandemic is a double-edged sword. It did highlight the health disparities that maybe people doing this work already knew about, but certainly maybe the larger context of people maybe weren't aware. They turned a blind eye. So,
Yeah. And it wasn't, in this last year, we don't just have, the structural racism has been identified more, especially through Mr. Floyd and through other killings and other things that have happened, that happen to have happened around this same time period. And
yeah,
so it's really kind of hard to separate out some things, but there's multiple things that happens in the world going on at the same time.
yeah, yes. Thank you for that question, Dr. Mann.
Thank you, ma'am.
What would you say is the biggest challenge for the future of neuropsychology, and how can trainees begin preparing to meet that challenge?
I will give you the same thing that I tell all of our trainees. You don't need to worry about your future. Be excellent in what you do. So I have a lot of quotes on my board, one of my glass boards in my office, what people say. And one of my favorites, and I think I actually said this, we give credit to somebody else, is I said, the quote is, all I ask for is simple perfection. And all I want is your highest level work. We're affecting people's lives. And, this is something I didn't mention before, is that one of the things I truly love about what we do is our colleagues respect us so much. We
Yeah.
make, I tell people this all the time, and it's not till you're actually working with. So you'd say, where somebody sends somebody to us and they will not work them up for transplant, and the person will die if we say, this isn't going to happen. They will not take out part of someone's brain if we're in the OR and say, no, we can't go any further. And
Mhm.
so I expect you to walk in there and bring your A game every single day. I expect you to learn to do your best work every single day. And so if you bring that, people will respect what you do. They will come to you because you're excellent at what you do. And
Mhm.
so if we don't have to worry about what our future is, when we're bringing something of that level of value to the table and people are going, that is what I need. I need to know what they know. They are helping my patient. They're helping me do my job. And so I don't think we have to worry about that. That doesn't faze me, the future of neuropsychology, if we do a good job. If we're doing a crappy job, no one will have use for us. And
Yeah.
that's what I think is damaging.
Yeah. Amen. I hear a couple people in the comments. They absolutely are love that response. Speaking of, our relevance and norms and everything else we've been discussing, Monique Wilson asked, do you think we will ever have norms that can equitably serve all populations? If not, what is the best solution?
I will slightly change that for Dr. Wilson there. And so the answer to that is not really, but that's not what neuropsychology is. Neuropsychology isn't about norms. Ultimately, you always have to make an interpretation. Norms are just numbers. And so when people say, what norm should I use? Should I use this one or that one? It's like, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. You should know the strengths and weaknesses of the normative set that you're using. And you should know when it doesn't fit. And rarely do our norms perfectly fit someone.
Yes.
Okay, it helps guide us and it helps inform the decisions that we make, but it's not about the norms, because every person that we come to, they come from a different background, they come from a different educational opportunity, they come from all of these different things. We're never going to address that through use of norms. That's never going to happen. But to understand neuropsychology, to understand neuroanatomy, to understand psychometrics, to understand the influence of that person's background, all of those things make a difference. And so it's the integration of that. It's the integration of their lab work, their neuroimaging, all of that. And so it's not about the norms. I wouldn't phrase it in that way. But it's using norms to help inform the things that we do and knowing when it kind of helps and when it kind of doesn't help.
I love how you discussed and framed norms in a way it's just another clinical, it's a tool. And we absolutely have to integrate all the information we have, including our clinical judgment and intuition to make, decisions and that are patient-centered.
Yeah. I like the way I love the way that you said that too, that these are tools.
Yeah.
And so the test doesn't tell me something. The test is a way of eliciting behavior.
Yeah.
The test isn't for something. It's not a test of executive functioning. It's a test that elicits behavior, and we can get language and so many other things out of that. These are tools that we use. So yeah.
Yes. So I think we may have time for one or two more questions. So let's hear from Chandler Zolikofer. What advice do you have for Black neuropsychology trainees who are working to balance the profound fatigue resulting from racial injustice and COVID-related stress with meeting graduate school milestones?
So many words. And because there's so many different levels of this question. And so I would probably answer this question differently for a graduate student than I would with a junior faculty person, than I would with a mid to senior person. Because I think at some point in your career, you start making more decisions for yourself, what you want to engage in, what you don't want to engage in. This for pretty much everybody who is Black, everybody who is a person of color, we're getting pulled into things that sometimes we go, I really don't want to do this. And it is just painful. And it's like, oh, another one. And so fortunately, I've got a good group of friends, some of them who are making comments here, and we text each other with our annoyance at things. And we text each other with things that I can't say out loud and I wouldn't say here in this forum. Because you don't want to see all of me here. You don't want that. So as much as I said, like, integrate myself with work, you don't want all of me at work. You really don't. But at different points in my career, so when I was a trainee, we didn't have opportunities that many of you have now in terms of people listening to us. And so I think that is a very, very different thing. And I think we're all learning, and I am still evolving tremendously in how I think about things. I'm unsure of how I feel about a lot of things. My apologies. I should have turned on the light. This looks horrible now. But I'm still evolving about things. I don't know I still don't know how I feel about some things. Some things I switch. Sometimes I go, I really feel this way, and I think about it more, and I go, nope, I don't feel that way at all. And so allowing yourself some space there and it's really helpful to have a group or a few people that you feel safe with in terms of doing that. But the balance is sometimes just pushing away things that you don't have time for or that you can be involved with. I think that's really important, and feeling that's okay, to give yourself the opportunity to say, it's okay for me not to do that.
Yeah. Give yourself permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question. Leah W. Let's see. What recommendations do you have for trainees seeking to increase these initiatives within their program? Initiatives on social advocacy.
Wow. Do you know, I think it's so interesting because I think there's different issues at different places. In some places, there is much more representation. At many places, there are not. There's different issues of faculty, institutions, private versus public. In California, we can't do race-based hiring or admissions or other kinds of things. And so I think understanding your system, and again, this goes back to learning the limitations within your system, or the opportunities in your system. Sometimes there's funding and other things. So I think having mentors that understand that, I think, and I'll go back to what I said before, understanding, learning about systems, not just like, let's just do all of these things, but learning what could potentially have the most impact in your system. So knowing who the people are that actually make the decisions, and then addressing things with them and learning what is it that they view as giving value to the change that needs to happen. Because sometimes you have to do something that you don't really want to do in order to get the outcome that you really want, or shifting things, or I have to say things in a different way. Like, I want to hire this person and this is it, but I know that I have to go around this way because this is what my chair wants to hear in order for me to get there. So it's learning about systems, and so talking to mentors or people who really have some level of sophistication, I think, is one of the greatest things that you can really learn.
Yes, yes. And I love that was an excellent question. And I'm glad that we're talking about this, because that's a skill set. I don't know if we're ever taught how to engage all stakeholders towards a common goal. I don't know if that's a skill that we're effectively taught in graduate school. So I'm glad that
I apologize for a quick second. I know let me turn on the light here.
Okay.
Just horrific. Oh, that was terrible. Okay. It's like putting a flashlight on the other side of the street. Okay.
Well, the good thing, we are kind of at the end, so we made it through with all that beautiful sunlight, nearly to the end. Yeah. Well, we have about 2 minutes. Any other burning questions for Dr. Norman out there before we wrap up our first interview series?
I'll recognize my colleague, Dr. Brewer, who's our chair of neurology here at UCSD. Thank you for joining, sir.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Brewer. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today for our first interview. Many thanks to Dr. Norman for being our first. We're incredibly appreciative to our advisory board, and we are beyond excited to continue to bring you more wonderful interviews throughout this month. Dr. Norman, thank you so much for your time and your incredibly thoughtful responses today. I don't know if you realize how impactful that was for me, but I'm sure our audience who's tuning in as well.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. And, I'm very incredibly honored to have been considered for this, and especially with a group of people that I so respect and that have been commenting. And I respect everyone so much. So thank you so much for this opportunity and for everyone attending.
Thank you. Well, all right, everyone, that will conclude our first interview series. Thank you so much for everyone who was in attendance. If you would like to reach out to us, our information, our social media, and our email address, our website, it's right there in the screen below. We look forward to seeing you all this upcoming Thursday, where we'll be interviewing Dr. Anthony Stringer, and we're incredibly excited to have him on board. So until next time,